This podcast contains explicit content not suitable for listeners under the age of 18. Parental discretion is advised.
Episode 2, The 550. The effects the budget change had on the original 3 and the subsequent 550, as well as their families. Some lost everything, their homes, their relationships with their children. Today's discussion will be about the budget change and its domino effect with Jesse Purcell and Kanise Marshall, with myself, Jennifer Hood, moderating. Jesse, take us back. Where were you when they said you were going home? What did that moment look like?
Okay, so when they first came and told me that I qualified for the extra good time credits, I actually was I was angry. As soon as dude came to my bunk, I just came in from working out, and I got out the shower, and the pod tech, which is basically a secretary for the counselor, he came to me and he said, "Purcell, get a home plan together and take it to the counselor right now." I looked him straight in the face. I said, "Man, get the fuck away from me, yo." And I was ready to beat him up or try. And then he told me he was serious. And he showed me this list of paper, and there's like 6 or 7 names on it. And they were all names in my pod that qualified for immediate release under this new law. I started crying. And I went out to the counselor, and she told me it was for real. So at the time, I was at a level 2 facility. I was at Lunenburg, and I had about maybe 2 years left, roughly 2 years.
Kanise, after hearing Jesse talk about that moment, what does it bring to you?
I've never been put in a situation where the direct impact of someone else's judgment or mood or whatever would determine, what the rest of my life was going to look like. I mean, parents, they have some control over us, but at the end of the day, there is some autonomy, right? Like we still can make our own choices. And, you come to this man and you tell him that he may not have to, or no, at this point it's for real. Like there's no may, it's you are going to go home. This is you getting to start your life over earlier than expected. And this is crazy to say. This is so crazy to say, but did any part of you want to be like, no, like I'm going to finish my time because I know it's over. Because then I know I control that part is over. Or after everything you had gone through to that point, there was already mistrust. You're already wrongly classified. Was there any part of you that was just like, nah, fuck that. I'm gonna finish this? Or did that last ounce of trust is what, that was it. Like this was the moment where you could trust this system again.
It's funny you asked that question because actually, yes, I did. So I did the math. Like I was sentenced to 38 years with 22 years suspended and 16 years to serve. Right, that's 16 years to serve with no good time. And another 22 years over of suspended time over my head. And yeah, of course I did the math on it. I'd be 54 years old. I'd be 54 years old when I got out, going in at 19. And you talk about just fuck that, I'll just finish my time. Nah, I got further. I went further than that, and a lot of guys did. Like fuck it, I'm here forever.
So those new credits in real life, that meant a year and a half of being able to go home early to your family versus waiting another 2 years. So when it got pulled, how'd they actually tell you, Jesse?
when they came and told me, I got called into the counselor's office, and they had a couple of security officers on standby, just because they didn't know how I would react. And basically, the counselor told me that they had some bad news, that I wasn't eligible for the enhanced sentence credits. And when I asked why, she said that they had received an email from the Attorney General's office saying that I was procedurally barred. That there in the state that she knew of, there were me and two other individuals that this has happened to, that the Attorney Generals had sent email out about. And when I asked her about the other two individuals, she said, as far as she could tell, they had received charges while in the institution. So that had barred them automatically from receiving any enhanced sentence credits. But I hadn't caught any charges. I hadn't had any street charges, more or less institutional charges, in over 10 years. And they said that the only reason she could give me was due to the nature of my crimes. And that's what kind of made me start looking into like what my charges were and how I found out that I was classified as first-degree murder, not attempted murder.
So that's when you learned about the misclassification, which will be talked about a little bit more in our next episode. But you had already done a lot of stuff up to this point, right? You had taken classes, reentry classes, gotten your driver's license. You had a lot of things set up. So what did that look like for you? Money and energy.
Everybody who gets released in the state of Virginia has to do what's called reentry. Everybody has to do it, right? And supposedly these programs are supposed to lessen recidivism. But for real, all reentry is a bunch of motherfuckers telling you have to make your bed by a certain time, that you have to have your jacket hanging a certain way, and then we're gonna have a meeting twice a day. The first meeting in the morning, we're gonna talk about what we having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then the next meeting at the end of the day is gonna be some bullshit just so that they can fuck up your rec. But anyway, I digress. When they told us we had to do this, they were like, there's too many people for them to put us all in reentry, so they did what was called a fast track reentry. So they took money out of off of my books that I had been saving for my release, and told me I had to pay for a DMV ID, right? I had to make sure I had my birth certificate and social security card. If I didn't have them, I had to pay for them, right? All of those things I had to have, and I had to pay for prior to my release. Also, because there were so many people getting out at this time, a halfway house was out the question for me. So my aunt and my uncle, they still to this day won't tell me how much money they spent preparing for me to get out at that time, because it was just so sudden. So I couldn't stay with them at their house. My aunt and my uncle literally bought a house for me to stay in, because there was nowhere else for me to go. And I don't know to this day how much they spent or how much they went out of their way to prepare for me, because they won't talk to me about it. But I know it hurt. It hurt real bad financially when they came back and told us no. And I wasn't able to get into that house and start helping my uncle pay those utilities and pay that mortgage and things like that. I also had to take a bunch of classes, a bunch of programs, forced. Like, there's no choice. You have to do it, right? So seminars, things of that nature. I got selected for an ACT, a work readiness test. Just randomly selected it. And if you don't do these things that they tell you are required by reentry, then they charge you and they take your good time. So you don't get to go home.
So, I mean, that's, like you said, that's money out of your account that you worked hard for and was, trying to put together to have something to be able to, when you left, you were able to get the things you need, such as like shirts and clothes and stuff like that. But now, because of this change, they just took away hundreds of your dollars you've been saving up, and they didn't reimburse you. They didn't get that back. They didn't say, sorry. They probably didn't even say sorry. You know what I mean? But Kanise, how does that make you feel listening to Jesse talk about that?
There's force being behind these bars, and then you're being pushed out, right? It's like, I need more time. I need to figure this out. Jesse, it did prompt another question for me. Like, through all this stuff, right? You're having to get like the thing that make you like a legal American citizen, right? Your birth certificate, social security card, all those things, right? But what did they tell you about the world and things that were happening around you? Like, you've been in there since you were 19. Decade or whatever has passed. Like, you come home, you got smartphones, freaking smart cars, you got people paying electronic money like Apple Pay and all this stuff. Like, this, you're talking about your schedule, like what you're going to eat for breakfast. Can you properly put up a jacket, whatever? But was there any indication of what this world was going to look at like when you walked outside that building? Wasn't there anybody talking to you about that?
Another excellent question. I'm glad you asked. No, like you don't understand. And I could put you on the phone with people who were in there with me, and they can be like, oh yeah, when it was Sco, oh yeah, he stood on business. I was giving them people the business every day. I'm like, y'all about to send me home. I don't know how to type. Why I can't get in a computer class? I've never seen an iPhone before. Why don't you show me how to use a cell phone that I'm gonna have to use when I get out? Right? I'm fighting with these people. I'm writing them up all the time. I got in trouble one day because in one of these little meetings, the counselor wanted me to sit somewhere else. Right? What they do is really psychological warfare. It's not about making you better or helping you become a productive citizen. It's not about that. Literally, this lady was in a bunch because they had rows of seats set up, right? I'm not a big dude, but I'm not a little dude. And, I don't really like being nuts to butt with another dude. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sitting in the back row, but there's like two rows, and I'm sitting in the third row, right? And there was a couple of seats open in the other row. She was like, "No, you got to fill in these seats, squeeze in there." I'm like, "No, for what? I can hear right here. It's literally like a foot away from me. It's not even like I'm moving that far." But the whole thing was move right there, move right there, move right there. And I'm like, no. And when I tried to pull her aside to discuss this with her, this is in reentry. This is me preparing to go home. I'm like, look, can I talk to you aside? No. There's no security officers in here. No. I said, well, look, if you ain't gonna talk to me, I need a security officer. I don't feel safe. Well, it's gonna have to wait. So I leave and I go to the nearest security officer, which was in the school, right? It was literally, I was in the visiting room. I had to walk out the visiting room, take a left, and probably about 40 feet, there was a door to go into the school. I went straight in there and told her what had happened and I needed to talk to a sergeant. I was trying to go back to the building. I got in trouble. I wrote the lady up for refusing to offer me security staff when I felt unsafe, right? Because I tried to talk to her. She was being very hostile towards me. And I know the game. I've been locked up long enough. I know a setup when I see it, right? But see, those things are important in reentry. Not learning how to type or use Microsoft Word. See, I come out here right now to do a job that I would probably be perfect in. But one of the requirements is you have to be proficient in Microsoft Word. And I'm not, because I couldn't learn that while in prison. Yet that is a requirement for almost every freaking job you work. You can ask your husband, Kanise, what it was like for me just trying to log my schedule on the computer when I started working at PetSmart. And I fought for years, and they refused.
So Kanise, hearing that, and you know what I mean, like knowing that the version of rehabilitation that the public sees and what we're force fed and told is this is what we're doing. We're trying to make better citizens, and pulling back that curtain a little bit and seeing, hey, it's really not about rehabilitating, because if it was about making people and sending out better people, the system wouldn't be set up the way it is. You know what I mean? But from an outside perspective, seeing inside, do you have anything you would like to add to what Jesse said?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what you stated, I mean, that is not at all what we're fed out here. Like, and I've heard about, jail as a business, like it's another form of slavery, and I've heard that. And some people just believe it's rhetoric, but I'm sitting here and I know you as a real person. You're not just some entity I follow on Instagram or YouTube, right? Like, you're a real person. I've had a meal with you. I've talked to you, right? And it boggles my mind that for a system that claims to be wanting to help people or rehabilitating people, and then they can't come out with basic skills, like all of your 20s spent in this place, right? Like, and I think about the things I take for granted, and these are and things that would annoy me, and these are the things we need to survive. And like, I see that and I feel that, and like, but it's crazy to me because I also see that when I talk to you, I would never think that. I would never think that you had any gaps in how you can talk to people and be in a room with people and engage with people and technology and skill. Like, I would never, I just assume, right? Like, I remember a conversation, you and Brandon were doing something, y'all were going to the concert. And I was like, oh yeah, are you going to get this? Do you need to send Jesse Apple Pay? And he was like, I don't think Jesse knows what Apple Pay is. And I was like, what? And I took for granted the fact that education, that moment, that experience just of humanness living in a technology driven world was taken from you. And I felt like an asshole because I was like, what do you mean he does? I don't, he has an iPhone, right? And he's like, babe, it's not, he doesn't know what that is. And it just boggles my mind to think that something that small, which is a driver of much of my daily life, could really stifle a person's growth when they transition from an institutional setting to being a real person again, to being out in this world again.
So that's the crazy thing that you bring up, Kanise, is, that's something that we pointed out before too, is that, Jesse was incarcerated when he was 19. I think he was incarcerated when the first iPhone was literally coming out. So he hadn't even been introduced to the technology yet when he had already been swept away by the system, you know what I mean? And then think that, he spent his entire 20s incarcerated, you know what I mean? Which is your most important. That's when most people are going to college, right? That's when we're learning and we're growing as a person. Instead, the things that are being asked for, like art education classes, CPR classes, things to make better humans, to make better people, to send out back into society, you're being denied. But, they're having them do these forced reentry programs, but it's not even about the content. It's about still the control. It's like, if you don't do it the way we say to do it, then you're wrong. And you know what I mean? Like, what kind of message is that sending to put back out in society as well? And so that brings me to my next question, Jesse, is after you got that news, after you had spent all that time and energy and you were excited because you were going home, once that realization has settled that this affected not just yourself, but hundreds of individuals, what was it like inside the prison? The faces, the sounds, the vibe? Paint that picture.
It was a very tense environment, right? Prison is tense anyway, but now it's different, right? On the one part, because like I said, I'm at a lower level facility at this point. So a lot of the individuals who are in this place receive those enhanced sentence credits because they're non-violent offenders. They have things like drug charges and, things like that. But then on the other hand, you got us, right? the ones who were deemed violent and unworthy of these enhanced sentence credits, we kind of feel like there's no point, right? Like, well, it's almost like we got sentenced again. Because for most of us, we had been locked up for decades, at least a decade plus. I had been at this point when they came and told me that I had already been in there like 12 and a half years, right? Uh, a good friend of mine, Lou, he had been in there 21, 22 years, right? My man Murder, he had been in there like 30, like 23 years, 22 years. My boy Green had been in there like 21 years. Like, these are all real people, right? My man said he had been locked up 20 some years. Like, these are real people that have been in there decades, who didn't ask for this law to change, who didn't have a right to vote in whether the law changed or not, who were just come and told, hey, you're going home 2 years early, you're going home 3 years early, you're going home X amount of time early. Oh, never mind. No, you're not. I'm just fucking with you and your family. It was just so unjust that there was also that hope that they was going to reverse this and they was going to make it right, that they wasn't going to do us and our family like this, that the Supreme Court was going to step in, that, you know what I mean? That it couldn't be that this easy, just one simple administration change and hundreds of people are affected. It shouldn't be like that, right? So there was the hope that they was going to fix it, but there was also just like, for real, I was like, man, they never going to let me go. Like, in my mind, I was in a place so dark that I was like, you know what? I've been in here this long. I'm gonna wait. My release date. If my release date come and they do not let me go, they ain't gonna have to worry about a reason to keep me. I'm gonna give them one because I ain't got nothing left to lose. I'm not gonna spend the rest of my life. I'm gonna make them kill me. If that's what they're gonna take my life, I'm gonna make them do it. I'm not gonna let them profit from it for the rest of it. So that was the mindset that I went to, and it wasn't just me. It was a lot of us, right? We could be patient for another 2, 3 years, 5 years, right? What was that after a decade and some change? But at the same time, it was like, yeah, I think all this was happening right after COVID too, right around the time of during COVID, right? So I guess the best way to describe the environment and the feeling, the overall feeling of the institution I was in was like just morbid hopelessness, I guess, or morbid hopefulness for others. Either way, it wasn't good, whether you was hopeful or hopeless.
Kanise, before I pass it to you, I do want to do one follow-up thing, Jesse, because you talked about the mentality of the people there. How was everybody's mental health when that happened?
So I had heard stories of individuals that had hung themselves, and I seen on the news there was a guy at I think it's Sussex that had committed suicide around this time, right? And of course the news didn't say why, but through the grapevine in prison we heard that it was because he was going home and then he wasn't, right? Um, there was a guy in my pod, and I don't know how he would feel about talking about it now that we're out, right? But there was a guy in my pod that had reached out to the mental health people at the institution we were at and asked for just to talk about it. He was like, man, like, I'm really not feeling good. Like, I'm not taking this well. I just want to talk to somebody about it. And they told him that there was nothing they could do about it. It wasn't a mental health problem. Right. So when he got that back on the request form and showed it to us in the part, I was livid on his behalf. Right. Because I'm like, yo, y'all motherfuckers are here every day doing nothing. The least you could do is just talk to the man. Right. So we all like, when we seen that on the request when he showed that to us, it was probably a good 10 or 12 of us in the pod. We was just going off. right? Demanded a supervisor. We spoke to them. So the mental health team at the institution put together a packet and sent it out to everyone who was affected by this, everyone who was told they were going home and then came back and told that they weren't. And what it was like a bubble sheet, like one of those spider web bubbles where you answer a question and it leads you to another question and it answers that. And, so the first question was, are you upset about whatever about something that is affecting you? Something outside that is affecting you? Yes. Right? It's yes or no. Yes. You go down to that. Can you control, this is literally the question, can you control or have any control over the situation? Yes or no? No. So the answer was let it go and move on. That was the mental health services we were provided. And a motherfucker could tell me I'm a liar, say whatever they want to. But I know it, man, I got 4 or 5 dudes on my Facebook right now. I could put you on the phone that was in the pod that got that paperwork.
So, Kanise, hearing all of this, and especially the mental health issues, people begging for, just somebody to listen, you know what I mean? Just to listen to them and for them to be able to get out what's going on, because, this is devastating for both them and their families. Their families are devastated. So it's like they need somebody to, just hear them and hear their pain. And it's like they won't even give them that common decency, that human touch. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think? How does that make you feel?
There's no way to properly depict how time slows down and then picks back up. And I can imagine during that time where you're going day by day, and then next thing you know, it's year by year and a decade has passed. And then all of a sudden they tell you you're going home, and then they take that away, and you just want to talk to somebody. You just want to try to speak about a moment, that is a blip to them, right? A clerical blip to them, but a moment that can literally take years off of your life, right? Whatever that person in Sussex or that prison, whatever they lost that.
That it's funny that you bring that up. There's somebody that we both know, right? That we have both interacted with, right? And you don't even realize it. And I don't, he might tell his story and talk about how he felt at the time, but he was told he was going home, and he hadn't been locked up a long time, right? He had been locked up a short amount of time, but he was told he was going home just a few months early, right? He was supposed to go home between July and August based on this new law, right? His release date was in October, the end of October, Halloween. When they came and told him he was going home and he was going through these things with me, he slept in the bunk right underneath him. He's a good friend of mine, right? A brother to me.
Kanise, hearing all of this, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, there's no amount of time, words, or anything can make somebody whole, right? But it's like a representative somewhere on high in Richmond or wherever, they look at these people on pieces of paper and they see them as numbers and paychecks or payments, or their new boathouse, their new golf clubs, their new Corvette, whatever it is. I don't even know. And it's like at the end of the day, the conscience, their lack of conscience is heartbreaking. But I want to know if they can't give you your time back. They cannot give you that moment back where you could see Kendra. But Jesse, what would be anything that you feel, maybe not that you're owed, but if they could say anything to you and the other, you know, 549 people, what would be the thing that you would need to hear from those people who made this decision?
Honestly, I wouldn't want to hear nothing from them, because probably if their lips is moving, it's a lie. So I wouldn't want to hear shit that they have to say. Um, I would want to tell them that it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much in today's society to find yourself in there, right? Nobody is innocent. Not one of us, right? It doesn't matter whether you were found guilty in a court of law or not. None of us are innocent, right? We've all hurt people. We've all been hurt by people, right? We've all broken to some degree or another society's laws, right? You ain't gonna sit here and tell me you've never checked your phone while you was driving. That's against the law, buddy. You know what I mean? And while checking that phone, it doesn't take long. Boom, you hit a kid, you hit somebody else in the car, right? Now you have vehicular manslaughter. Are you a horrible human being? Should you be cuffed up and walked on a leash like an animal because of it? I mean, I'm just curious. Now, I'm not saying my crime was an accident, and I'm not saying it should be compared to one, but it's just the point. We're all human beings here, and we shouldn't be doing things to make each other bitter or angry, right? We shouldn't have institutions in place that specialize in making individuals bitter, right? It shouldn't happen. Not as advanced as we are, not with our level of understanding, right? You're going to tell me that we're capable of building skyscrapers and right, going to the moon or sending things into space, right? Building submarines, but we can't come up with a better institution than what's in place. It's just, I don't feel like there's anything that they could say to me. To me, I would just be like, man, we're all humans. Maybe you should think about that.
So, Kanise, I'm going to throw your question back at you and ask you if, being somebody from the outside and seeing the real effect that this budget change had, delaying people 2 years, some people taking their lives, you know what I mean? Some families losing everything because they were gambling on their family member coming home, you know what I mean? They wanted to be that peace and that anchor for them, only to lose everything with gambling on a sure thing, right? Because as a mother, as a woman, that's something that you can identify with, you know what I mean? Because you're like, man, I can, that is me, like that's, if that was my situation, you know what I mean? Would we not do the same thing for our men, our loved ones, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you heard about it, because I don't know if it was prevalent in the area you were in, but how does that make you feel looking back and knowing like that moment of maybe when you heard the news first versus now, what it really means to you?
It's interesting you say that, because just like any other onlooker, bystander, you know, I made quips and comments because it's like, oh, we just gonna let criminals out. That's what we're gonna do because y'all can't afford to feed them. And it's like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And the majority of the public has no idea what they're talking about, because it wasn't a loved one of mine. I met Jesse after the fact, right? And like, it just makes me realize we aren't doing a service to any of these people. They come out, I don't know the statistic, and I'm sure that you guys do, about the amount of people that return after being, they do their time and they go back. They do their time and then they go back, right? Because it's a system they know. My uncle, he spent quite a bit of time in jail and went in prison. And when he got out, everything about him resembled that place. He was not the guy I grew up with. My uncle, who I loved, who was fun, whatever. There was something about him that changed. Like, when he would sit in a room, he always knew where the exits were. When he ate his food, when he any interaction he had, he was always gauging where everybody else was, out of protection for himself, because there was always the institution he left, but it never left him, right? And he was handy before he went in, right? He knew how to do electrical work. He knows how to do all those things, but those were skills he had before. I don't think he gained anything in there, right? And so he got more quiet. He got to be a shell of himself. And it's like we need to do better. And I say that, and I know that doesn't cover everything, but we need to do better. We need to examine these things. We need to understand what people need. Like, I know, as a human being who participates in counseling on a regular basis, how much it helps me, right? And I was just dealing with something as far as, you know, infertility, right? And if I was going to be able to bear children, and what that means to be a woman, to be a person. And Jesse's story has just not highlighted, but emphasized the deepness of human connectivity and support, and people, like he said, I'm not going to make excuses for what his crime was, right? That he said, I'm not saying that my crime wasn't a small crime. What he's saying is, if I'm in a place that is supposed to help me and it's supposed to rehabilitate me, that those that I shouldn't have to beg for something that should be given to any human being. The right to speak, the right to under someone to talk to you on a level that you are not deemed a villain, right? Especially when you served your time, right? And some of it was rocky. I'm not gonna say you did it all peacefully. But you served your time. And when that is done, what then are we offering these people, right? You do your time, you come out. There should be resources. There should be more than halfway homes. Because I've I've seen what that is. And that is a whole other conversation within itself. You're just plopping people in places, right? Support is so important. And it needs to look like skills. It needs to look like connection. It needs to look like bringing you up to speed on how to function at just a base level when you get out. And
It needs to be a village, right? A village.
exactly. And it can't, and and I bring it back to this. That's why this organization is so important. And I hope that people see that and they get the drive for that, because it's going to take a group of people. It's going to take so many more people to wake up and realize the harm that was caused from this, and then the backlash that's still coming from it. We got to do better.
So, Jesse, what would make it right look like on paper and in real life for you? Not like it's a hypothetical, but what would you want and you would be good with it? Just give me this one thing and I'll be good. What is that for you?
Just let me go. Let me off probation. Let me have my rights back. Right? Even if they didn't want to give me my right to bear arms back, they wanted to make me wait a little bit for that one. All right, cool. Give me all the rest of them back. Let me vote. Let me travel. Let me get a passport. Right? Let me go and enjoy this beautiful world that we have. Right? I used to sit and watch all these places on PBS. Let me go and see them. You know what I mean? Already, because I'm a felon, I can't go to Australia, can't go to Canada, can't go to Japan. Right? These places I used to dream about going. Australia, especially when I was a kid. Just because of the animals there, the wildlife. Right? I already can't do that. Right? You want to keep the felonies cool. You want to keep the fines cool. Whatever. I don't care. Let me move on with my life. That would be enough for me.
So, Kanise, before we close, is there anything that you want to add on the budget piece?
I mean, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a damn shame that the dollar signs mean more than the heartbeats. These are people that deserve a way better explanation than what they received. There are people that were seen below humanity, and that should never be. That should never happen. And so moving forward, I want people to hear this and take on this thing where they are more involved, that they are listening, that they are reading between the lines, and they're not taking stuff at face value. We need more people listening and gaining understanding and willing to fight for people they don't know. Um, I had the pleasure of meeting Jesse after, um, and that's why I'm fighting now. But we got to take a chance and fight for people we don't know.
That's a perfect example, because that's what we're trying to do here, right? With the whole podcast and everything, is we're trying to break through the barriers of this will never happen to me. And this could be your loved one. Your loved one could be one text message away, one drink at dinner at a nice restaurant, right? That's all it takes. And people don't realize, because they're like, not me, until it is them. You know what I mean? So last word to you, Jesse. What do you want folks to do after hearing this?
What I would like for people, if anybody heard this and anybody was like, well, you know what, maybe I'll give his words a chance. Try being more open to everyone, right? The world doesn't have to be out to get you. The world doesn't have to be good or bad, right? Just be more open with people. And also consider this. If you are wronged in some way, and for some reason the individual who wronged you has to go to prison, right? I'm not saying that people shouldn't be punished for doing wrong. There should be punishment. But I want you to think about it. The next time you send somebody to prison for 5, 10, 15 years, right? Even 20, 30, right? Unless you put them in there to where they come home, they're so old that really they don't feel like moving around anymore, is prison a place to send them, right? Where they're treated like animals every day, where they're segregated and separated from their loved ones, where they forget what it means to be human and to have compassion for others, where it's the culture to ignore the sounds of a man getting raped and pretend you don't hear it. Is that where we should send the people who already are doing something wrong? Maybe already need help. Maybe they're angry about something else. Should we send them there and then let them back out? And then wonder why there's a cycle, why there's a recidivism rate. Why is there so many individuals from same families and same households that get incarcerated? I wonder. That's all I would encourage people to think about.
All right. So that concludes the episode of the 550. Our next episode 3, is going to be the clerical error. We'll be speaking about Jesse's misclassification and how it still affects him to this day. The clerical errors the system refuses to fix and the effects it has on those trapped within it. Until next time.